Hi everyone, I'm Anne-Marie from brambleberry.com. Thanks so much for watching today. I'm going to be showing you how to make this amazing Raspberry Truffle Hanger Swirl Cold Process Soap. Going to be utilizing Brambleberry's Silicone Raspberry mold on top for great decorative accent, Brambleberry's Raspberry Truffle Fragrance Oil, which discolors a little bit. And so one of the things we're going to be going over in this video is how to use discoloration to your design advantage. So while this fragrance does discolor, you guys, it smells so good. It really smells like a raspberry truffle. You can get those deep, dark chocolatey notes, but there's also the sweetness from the fresh raspberries. And since I'm in Washington State and we're one of the largest raspberry producers in the nation, I know my raspberries, and you guys, it smells really good. So I think it's totally great that it discolors because again, we can work with it design-wise. And then we're also going to be working with how to pipe your soap. So how to literally turn this thicker recipe into icing for the top of your soap, which is a really great touch. Because of the hanger swirl, because of the icing, because of the melt and pour embed, this is definitely a more advanced soap. It's going to take a little bit more time, but it also uses advanced techniques. So if you are new to soaping, this is not the recipe to start on. Go to a more basic one. You can find those at Soap Queen TV or at brambleberry.com or in any of my books. First things first, we're going to make our raspberry embeds and get that all prepped. So this is low sweat, clear melt and pour soap, and we're using that because it has less propensity to develop humidity. And remember, these are sitting on top of the soap, so that's very important. This is also the perfect red coloring block. I'm just going to go ahead and shave a little bit of it off, so that way I can melt it down while I am melting this in the microwave. And it's kind of an eyeball situation. If you can always add more, but you can't take it out. So I'm just going to do that one kind of big shaving, and then I'm going to melt this in 30-second bursts in the microwave. Now that this is fully melted, I'm just going to stir this red in and make sure it's the color I want it to be, because remember, we can always add more. I feel like this is a little light. I mean, it looks okay, but I'm going to add a little bit more for good measure. And the nice thing about these Brambleberry color blocks is if you do pretty fine shavings, the soap usually is hot enough that it will melt them, so you don't have to remelt it in the microwave. I'm happier with this color because remember, these are pretty small, and so we don't want it to be super translucent, or at least I don't for this design. So this looks like it's going to be pretty matte when it comes out, so I'm excited to match this color. Now I'm going to pour, and with this Brambleberry mold, I like to fill it about 3/4 of the way up as opposed to the entire way. I find that the soap comes out just a little easier. Plus, these are pretty tall as is, and so if you fill it all the way up, you displace more soap when you're placing these in the frosting at the end. Now I'm just going to set this off to the side. It's going to take a couple hours to harden and cool, and while I'm waiting for that, I'm going to start on my soap. Now that raspberries are prepped, I have cold process prep work to do. Part of getting a complicated recipe correct is all the prep work that goes involved. So first things first, this is the Brambleberry hanger tool. I need to make sure that it fits the width of this mold, and it's bendy, so it works for a lot of different molds. And so this looks pretty good. So place it inside, just kind of do some exploratory swirling and make sure that this was going to work for you, because you don't want your soap to be in there and then be trying to get this right. Next, I'm going to prep my colorants using this mini mixer. You want to make sure you get any clumps out, especially of the oxides. So we have red raspberry mica, brown iron oxide, and titanium dioxide. And I'm going to go from lightest to darkest, so that way I don't have to wash my mini mixer in between. So lightest means starting with the titanium dioxide, which is 1 teaspoon of titanium dioxide in 1 tablespoon of a lightweight oil. That's for all this. That's the same ratio for all the prepping for all the colorants. Just a little cleanup prep tip. So when you want to clean this up, a little bit of alcohol works wonders to break down that oil and help get the colorants off pretty easily. Finally, I've pre-measured my fragrance oil. It smells so good, you guys. Juicy and fresh, and it makes me want to eat. It smells so good. And now it's time to suit up for safety. I have my lye water prepped. I've already got sodium lactate in the lye water, and sodium lactate is totally optional. It's the sodium salt. It's the salt of lactic acid, and it helps to make for a harder, shinier bar that you can release faster. So I love to use it every time I use a silicone mold, but it's totally optional. And you don't need to use it if you don't want to. It goes directly into the lye water though, so it's already in there. I'm going to stick blend this to kind of a light to medium trace and then split off about 15 ounces of the base into here, into another container, so that way I can make my pink. This recipe has some butters in it, and one of the reasons we use butters in there is because we want this to get just a little bit thicker, a little bit faster, because we want it to be able to suspend that frosting at the end. So that's one of the things we're gonna do, is use this really easy method to make our frosting that just basically involves waiting for this to get harder. And so because of that, we use some butters in here to help with that hardening faster process. Now I'm splitting off 15 ounces into this other container, and that's going to become our pink swirl. And I'm weighing it just so I can be pretty precise, because I want to make sure I have enough brown soap left over for frosting. Putting all of it, just put all of the titanium dioxide in, because I really want this to be a fairly white. And then I'm going to do just about a teaspoon of this pink mixture, and that'll get us a really beautiful contrasting pink color. Now that this is sort of mixed in, I'm just going to stick blend it really quickly, because what you'll notice is it'll break up any clumps in the titanium dioxide, and you'll see this get a little bit whiter. It's a much more pastel color now because of that blending. So now I'm going to put this to the side and work on my brown. And this is going to be unfragranced. That's how it stays this beautiful pink color. All the fragrance is going into the brown soap. And the brown soap is going to get 2 teaspoons of this brown oxide. And oxides are super powerful, and so that's actually going to be enough to color this entire batch and color it a really rich chocolatey brown. And I'm going to give this a quick stick blend just to get it in quickly and make sure the oxide is totally smoothed out. This Raspberry Truffle Fragrance Oil behaves so well that you can actually stick blend it in short little bursts. Perfect. So now I'm at actually pretty thin trace, barely medium trace in the pink and the brown. And now it's time to work on our hanger swirl. So I have my Brambleberry silicone mold, I have my hanger swirl tool here. I'm going to pour a little bit of brown in the bottom just to kind of cover the bottom. And then, you guys, it is time to have fun with this. So we will just be pouring this in kind of S-shaped swirl curves and in back and forth. We're going to vary our heights. That way we get just a little bit of interest and differentiation already going, so that our soap has different patterns. And it's really fun because, of course, no 2 bars come out alike. And I love that about this recipe. And you guys, now that I'm looking at this, I poured this at a thinner trace than those bars, so it'll be a slightly different look, less kind of thick swirls, more thinner, finer swirls, completely fine. In fact, when we were kind of playing around with this recipe, we tried a in the pot swirl, and I'll show that to you guys next too. So you can kind of see what thin swirls look like versus thick swirls, and then figure out how thick you want your trace to be. Now it's time to use our hanger swirl tool. So you insert it on one side, and you go around in a big loop, and then a few small loops, and then go around the other way, reverse it, and a few small loops, and then pull up, and you are done. Now, all we have to do is wait for our brown soap to harden up so we can turn it into frosting. So while we're doing that, let's do some dishes. Let's prep our frosting bag. Let's check our raspberries. You have probably 10 minutes to wait for that to get hard. You can see we've washed all the dishes, and so now it's time to prep our frosting bag. So I kind of just look down at the bottom and clip off enough so that I'm going to be able to get my frosting tip through, but not so much that it's going to just slide out the bottom. When you're putting this in, kind of inflate the bag a little bit like that, and then slide it in. Because if you don't, from experience, I will tell you that these little things can perforate the sides of the bag, and then you waste a bag. Then you squeeze this tight because you don't want any leaks to come out the side, and you're good to go. I'm just going to check to see how my soap has been doing. It's been about 10 minutes, and this is good, but this is not going to hold. And you can kind of tell because when you do a plop and you plop it back down, if it starts to get kind of fold back in or sink back in, you know that that's going to happen when you pipe your frosting. So I'm going to give this another few minutes, probably 3 or 4, and it'll keep thickening as it sits. So you may have seen my other Soap Queen TV video where I did soap cupcakes, and I used frozen oils and an ice bath and all these like much more difficult things. And you'll notice that the texture for this frosting is a little smoother, a little silkier, a little looser than that texture for that frosting. It's also 5,000 million percentage points easier to do in terms of timing and just technique. So I'm fine with that trade-off, but if you want a really thick, dense frosting that holds its shape perfectly, you'll probably want to do that ice water bath frosting method. So I'll make sure to link to that video down below or someplace on the screen. If soap frosting is your thing, or you want to watch a master soap froster at work, Katie at Royalty Soaps has got it down. She puts my frosting technique, as sad as it is, to shame. She gets amazing height, and she really has taken that soap frosting to the next level. All right, this is looking way better. It's thicker. Whoa, it's holding its shape and form. So I'm gonna go ahead and try this. I'm also not in a very hot area. If I was in a warm area, this would have even taken longer to set up, so that's something to keep in mind. And when you're filling the frosting bag, you don't want to fill all the way full. You kind of want to just do 2/3 of the way so you have enough space to squeeze and get some pressure. And it's okay to have to fill the frosting bag more than once, so that's something to keep in mind. All right, here we go. Whee! Okay. This is holding its shape. It's deflating a little, but it's going to be totally fine. So as I'm going, you can see I don't like how I started, so I'm changing it up a little bit, and I'm being a little more gentle, little less swirly, trying to have a lighter touch to get a little bit more height and a little bit more precision on this. And I like it better, and I need to fill the whole mold, so I want to make sure that I have enough soap to do that. So now I'm going to take this and just fill the very last of the soap. It's a little bit gloopy, but don't forget, that's why we wear disposable gloves. So it's a little bit gloopy, but it's thick. And I'm going to do one more frosting dollop down the middle to get that height before putting the raspberries on. Okay, and down. And remember, I changed up my technique, so I'm going to try and keep that going throughout the middle. And then I'll be left with a little bit of soap frosting left over, so I'll be able to fill in any gaps. So if you're looking and you're like, ooh, missed a spot, don't worry. I'll be able to go back and fill those in. So now I can see that there's some holes in here, especially on this side. So I'm just going to use this to fill it in a little bit and make it more smooth and full. So it's not so ridgy feeling and more natural frosting feeling. So when I'm making soap frosting, I always make a little bit extra because I hate running out because I don't want to have to make more. If you do have extra and you hate wasting soap, you can always grab a cutting board and make little samples or make little frosting toppings for another project. So I'm going to do that right now. Now it's time to put the embeds in and be thinking about the size that you want for your bars. Now I can probably get about 10 in here. If you do much less than that, your bars end up pretty big. So keep that in mind, and you just push these little guys in. Try not to get the soap on your fingers, because if you get the soap on your fingers, it's hard to keep it off the raspberries. This looks really cute as is, but just a little something extra. We're gonna spray some Gold Sparkle Mica on this. Woo! I love these little puffer things. They make it so fun, and they're the perfect amount of mica. I remember back in the day, I used to literally blow it on with my hands, and it made a much bigger mess than this. So this innovation is really great. Okay, we've got good iridescence, good sheen. Now this is gonna sit in the mold for probably about 3-ish days before I'm able to pop it out. But don't worry, I made some earlier so I could show you. Last thing I'm gonna do, 99% rubbing alcohol, prevent that soda ash, and then gonna let this sit. Before I start and cut this, I want to show you guys a little bit more about our testing process and talk a little bit about trace. So this is a really thin trace, and you can see what happened. The colors aren't as distinct, and I got a lot more glycerin rivers. That's that translucent area in between the swirls. It's a beautiful bar of soap. There is nothing wrong with this bar of soap. I would be thrilled to buy this soap, get it as a gift, or give it. However, you'll notice a difference in design when we pour with a thicker swirl. This was an in the pot swirl with a very thin swirl, and this was a thicker swirl that we did with a hanger swirl. You'll notice the colors are more distinct, and we don't have those glycerin lines in between, the glycerin rivers in between the swirls. So total personal preference. Today I poured at a thinner trace, so it'll be closer to kind of this in consistency. I can't wait to see how that looks. In the meantime though, I've got this other one for you, and let's see it cut. So to unmold these, you just pull gently away from the sides, and this is a little trickier, right? Because you can't just flip it over because you don't want to ruin anything. So you just push gently and try and break the airlock. It's a little trickier, again, than if you could just flip it over, but I can see that the airlock is breaking, and I'm kind of tempted just to try and pull it out, but I'm not going to because it's a little soft on the sides. So there we go. Be gentle, go slow. Okay, there. Whew. Little soft, but still doable. I'm gonna go ahead and cut one of these bars, and let's just kind of see how this looks. All right, I can't wait to see this first cut. Very excited. It's always a surprise with a hanger swirl what you're gonna get. All right, gently, and then we don't pull the knife off, because if you pull the knife off, it sometimes can rip the soap. Oh, look how pretty that is. So pretty. It looks perfect. I love it. That is such a beautiful, distinct swirl. So over time, this fragrance will start to darken a little bit because the fragrance oil is a discoloring fragrance oil because of those chocolate and vanilla notes. And so you'll see that the brown gets a little browner, but the pink stays pink. So I'm gonna continue to cut the rest of these and then let this sit for 4 to 6 weeks before giving it away or selling. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, bye. Because I really didn't like those kind of looser swirls, so I'm doing more, I would call this the ploop technique. You can't use that.
Yeah, you can. Sure. You can, yeah, we can be silly and laugh.